I died in her arms once. When I opened my eyes again, I was 15 years old. She was still breathing on the other side of the country. This was the first thing I checked. I did not check the year on the calendar. I did not check the scar that used to run across my palm. I checked her instead. She was alive, and she did not know me yet. The man who would kill her had not yet finished carving his path to her front gate. Her name was Tang So Wool. She was the youngest daughter of the Sichuan Tang clan. She was a poisoner and a hidden weapons master. She was sharp-tongued and small, and she was mine. At least, she had been mine once. In the life before this one, I held her while her blood ran into the dirt. She smiled at me as if I was worth the trouble. The world was ending around us. The heavenly demon had already broken the great sex one after another. By that last night, there was almost nothing left to break. My swords cracked against him. My best techniques slid off his skin like water off a stone. He walked past me the way a man steps around a puddle. I did not exist to him. She existed to him only long enough to die. I sat in the courtyard for a long time. The fires burned down to embers. The crows stopped being polite. Then I stood up and spent 20 more years killing my way toward that same man. It did not matter. He was already bigger than the sky by then. I was one blade at the end of the world. Men started calling me the Blood Wolf. Then they called me the Sword Demon. Neither name meant anything. Both names meant I had nothing left to lose. I lost anyway. I died on a mountain alone on a bad day. I died from a wound I could have avoided if I had cared enough to try. The next breath I took, I was 15 years old. My mother was calling me down for breakfast. I did not go down for breakfast. 20 years of muscle memory told me exactly where to run. She would be on a small road between two towns. She was weeks from meeting me. She was weeks from meeting the assassin who would first try to kill her. In this timeline, the Tang clan still walked in sunlight. Their patriarch was named Tang Jin Qian. The people called him the Poison King. He was still healthy enough to laugh at his youngest child. So Wool was still spoiled and loud and untouched by grief. She had never seen my face. I decided to be the last thing she was ready for. The road she traveled ran east of a small market town called Anfeng. I had been there once in the other life. I knew the tea house on the corner. I knew the smell of the wet stone at the well. The crooked pine at the fork in the road leaned like a drunk uncle. I knew where she liked to stop. I knew the name of the innkeeper who would try to overcharge her. Most of all, I knew the ambush point 3 days to the east. A white-haired swordsman was waiting there with 100 killing intents and a very old grudge. That grudge belonged to the 100-kill swordsman. He would come for her because her father had once killed his master. The Tang clan poisoned the master. The apprentice grew up and waited. Now the apprentice was tall and quiet. He would open her from shoulder to hip before the Tang clan even knew he was in the province. This would happen unless I got there first. So I got there first. I found her outside a mountain shrine at dusk. 2 clan guards traveled with her. Both men were first-class fighters, and both were good. She stood by a stone lantern with a red string tied around her wrist. She held a paper charm in her hand while arguing with the shrine keeper about the price of incense. Her voice was sharp and impatient. The keeper looked ready to give her the incense for free. He just wanted to be rid of her. I stood behind a tree and watched. My chest ached in a way I could not put down. She had been dead for so long inside my head. Seeing her breathe was like being stabbed in a good way. The 2 guards were the problem. I could not kill them. They were her father's men and they were loyal. Their bodies going home in boxes would set the wrong wheels turning. Therefore, I did not kill them. I dropped them instead. 20 years of pressure point knowledge does something to your fingers. They went down inside 2 breaths and would sleep until morning. One of them would wake up with a headache and a story. He would never be brave enough to tell that story. She turned around and her hand went into her sleeve. I already knew what was in that sleeve. She had poison needles and a small vial of paralysis mist. She had a paper bird. The paper could open a man's throat if she threw it right. I let her throw the paper bird. Then I caught it between 2 fingers before it kissed my neck. Her mouth opened. I did not let her scream. A pressure at the base of her jaw sent her forward into my arm. She was awake but unable to move or speak. She was unable to reach for the mist. Her eyes were furious in a way I had missed for 20 years. I almost laughed. I did not laugh because there was no time. I carried her north. 2 days later, we were in a market town 3 provinces away. Nobody expected the youngest daughter of the Tang clan to be there. An old drunk in a tavern leaned across his cup. He told anyone who would listen that a young lady from Sichuan had finally stepped into the martial world. Word traveled that way through rumor first and truth much later. The drunk said she was small and pretty. He said she would kill a man before she asked his name. He said whoever crossed her would be flayed by her father in a courtyard. He said her father would do it with a smile. At the next table over, a boy in traveling clothes finished his bowl of noodles. He set his chopsticks down neatly across the rim. He paid the innkeeper in copper. He wiped his mouth and rose. The innkeeper thought the boy looked too calm for someone his age. That boy was me. In the back room, a girl was in a small storage closet behind the kitchen. She was tied gently and warmly and thoroughly. She was the youngest daughter of the Sichuan Tang clan. She was awake by then, and her eyes were murder. I stepped through the door with rice. She tried to bite me. She actually snapped at my hand like a badger. I turned my wrist away and set the bowl down. I told her I would remove the gag if she promised not to scream. She nodded so aggressively that I thought her head might come off. I removed the gag. She screamed anyway. It was not a call for help, but a curse. It was a long and colorful curse involving my ancestors and my future children. She cursed the shape of my skull. Her voice was raw and she tried to spit at me. I waited until she ran out of breath. Then I told her quietly that in 9 days her father would receive her severed head in a lacquered box. I said that I was the reason he would not. The curse died in her throat. She stared at me. Her eyes went from fury to confusion to something more careful. She was a member of the Tang clan. Tangs are trained from infancy to notice when a lie starts sweating. I was not sweating. I was 15 years old and I had watched her die. I could not sweat about a threat I had outlived. She asked me how I knew this. I told her the name of the 100-kill swordsman. I told her what he wore and how he tied his hair. I described the scarf on his sword. I described the ambush point. I described the smell of the pine sap on the trees at the bend in the road. I described a scar on his cheek that only 3 people had seen. 2 of those people were dead and the third person was me. Her face did not move. However, her hands did. The needles she had hidden between her fingers slid back where they came from. I had left the needles in her sleeve as a small courtesy. She asked me who I was. I told her I was no one. She did not believe me. She would not believe me for weeks. That was fine. She was alive to disbelieve, and that was the entire point. We left the town at the second watch. I put her on a small horse and took the reins and walked. She could have kicked the horse and bolted at any point. She did not. She was calculating me. I could feel it on the back of my neck like a bug crawling. Every so often she would ask a small question. She asked about her father or her brother or the name of a servant. She was testing to see if my knowledge broke down anywhere. It never did. I had lived in her family house and eaten from their table. I had buried her mother. I could not tell her any of these things. By the time we reached the foothills, she had stopped fighting the ropes at her wrists. She still called me every insulting name she knew. The insults grew softer as the hours passed. Around dawn, she called me an idiot instead of a criminal. That felt like progress. The cave was where I meant it to be. It was half a day off the main road and hidden behind ivy. It was dry inside and had a small spring that tasted of iron. I had brought her here in the old life too. She had loved this cave and wanted to be buried near it. I had not been able to bury her at all. We stepped inside. She turned in a slow circle. She looked at the fire pit and the blankets. She saw the dried fruit and the 2 ceramic cups. Her expression flattened. She said this looked less like a kidnapping. She said it looked more like a very strange marriage proposal. I did not laugh, though I wanted to. I set her down beside the fire and untied her hands. She did not run. She rubbed her wrists and asked if I was going to hurt her. The answer to that question was no. It had been no since before she was born. I could not say any of that. So I only shook my head and told her I would sleep by the mouth of the cave. I said she could throw things at me if I came close. Her mouth twitched. It was not a smile, but it was close to one. That night I could not sleep. This was not because of her, but because of the herb. I had remembered the herb on the road. In the life she had lost, So Wool had wandered into these hills before her death. She had been chased by different assassins. She stumbled across a small purple flower between 2 roots. It was a poison purifier, rare enough that most poison masters spent their lives looking for one bulb. She had picked it and kept it. She used it 3 years later to save a village. She had told me about it once in a garden. I could still hear her voice describing the petals. The flower was here now. It had to be here. I had come to the same cave in the same season. If she had found it in her wandering, I could find it too. I left her sleeping by the fire. I drew a soft line of chalk across the cave mouth. This was so she could not step over it without me knowing. I went out into the dark. The flower took most of the night. I searched the slope on my hands and knees. My eyes were 15 years old, and much better than my old eyes. Around the hour before dawn, I found it under a rock ledge. It had 3 petals and was exactly the shade of a bruise. I dug it up with both hands. My fingers were shaking. 15-year-old fingers do not shake often. Mine did. She was awake when I came back. She was sitting up with her arms crossed and a flat expression. She said she had counted my steps as I left. She said she had almost decided I was not coming back. She said she had also almost decided that would be a relief. I put the flower in her palm. She stared at it. Her mouth opened and closed. Her hand curled around the petals as if she was afraid I might take them back. She asked me where I had found it. Her voice was suddenly very young. The Tang family knows poisons the way blacksmiths know iron. She knew what she was holding. She knew what it meant for her body. In the other life, she had held it exactly the same way. I could not tell her that. So I told her only that I had gone looking and had gotten lucky. She said no one got lucky like that. I agreed with her. I told her to eat it anyway. She ate it and made a face while she chewed. She said that it tasted like a wet coin. Her cheeks flushed after the second breath. I watched her body take the medicine. I had waited 20 years to see this moment. Her small hand pressed against her collarbone. Her eyes closed. A long and slow breath left her. Something old and painful loosened inside her. She had not known that it was there. She opened her eyes and looked at me differently. I did not let the look land. I turned away and started the fire. She did not ask any more questions that morning. She did not ask any that afternoon either. Instead, she watched me. She watched every task I did. I sharpened the small knife I had brought. She watched the way my thumb tested the edge. When I split a stick for the fire, she watched my wrist move. She was the daughter of a martial artist. She was measuring me. I could see her calculating the facts in her head. The total did not fit a 15-year-old boy. Late in the afternoon, she spoke very casually. She said that my killing intent was strange. That stopped me. I looked at her. She was picking at a piece of dried apricot. She was not looking at me. She pretended the question was small. She said my killing intent felt older than my face. She said it felt like something the elders warned about. It was not orthodox and not demonic. It was nothing her father had ever taught her to identify. I told her she was imagining it. She said that members of the Tang clan did not imagine things about killing. The silence between us stretched a little. She let the silence continue. Then she asked her real question. She wanted to know if I was going to kill her. I said no. She wanted to know if I was going to sell her. I said no. She wanted to know if I loved her. I did not answer. My hand kept sharpening the knife. I heard her put the fruit down. She said she was going to keep asking. I told her she should sleep instead. She did not sleep. However, she stopped asking. She lay on her side by the fire with her back to me. After a while, her shoulders rose and fell in a rhythm. I remembered this from another life. I remembered a house I had not been able to save. The men came the next afternoon. I felt them before I heard them. Killing intent is a small pressure at the base of the skull. There were 4 of them moving through the trees. They were in a spread pattern. These men were good. They were at the level of an assassin league. They were the kind of men hired for secret missions. Their leader trailed behind by 20 paces. He was quiet and patient. His hair was white. The 100-kill swordsman had come faster than I planned. I stepped out of the cave. I pulled the ivy closed behind me. So Wool tried to follow. I turned and held up one hand. Something in my face stopped her at the threshold. She stayed there. Her fingers dug into the vines. Her eyes were huge. I walked down the slope to meet them. The 4 scouts saw me first. They did not draw their weapons. A boy alone on a hillside is not a threat to them. One was a broad-shouldered killer with a shaved head. He asked if I had seen a girl in Tang clan colors. He was smiling when he said it. He thought the smile made him look friendly. I did not answer. The 100-kill swordsman stepped through the trees. His sword was still sheathed. His scarf was blue exactly as I remembered. He tilted his head at me. He asked in a soft voice if I was lost. I told him I was not lost. I told him I had been waiting for him. His smile started small. He asked me for my name. I told him a name I had not used in 20 years. The smile on his mouth changed shape. The name meant nothing to him but everything to me. Powerful killing intent came off my shoulders. It was not the intent of a 15-year-old boy. The 4 scouts stopped smiling. One of them drew his blade. I let them come. The man with the shaved head drew first. His blade came up in a clean arc. He was fast. In another life, that arc would have killed a lesser boy. My body moved before I told it to. 20 years of instinct in a 15-year-old frame is strange. It is like a small cart pulled by a very large horse. The horse always wants to run fast. His wrist met my palm. I felt the bones crack under my fingers. The attacker did not understand what was happening. The blade fell. My other hand went under his jaw. He dropped without a sound and did not get up. The other 3 scouts came at once. That was the correct choice for them. Alone, they were already dead. They felt it the moment their friend hit the ground. Killing intent has a color when done correctly. Most swordsmen never learn to see it. Master-level men see it faintly. It looks like heat over a road in summer. I had learned to shape it over many years. I pushed it out and wore it like a coat. The coat I wore that afternoon was the color of old blood. The 3 scouts stopped mid-step. Their legs simply refused to move. It was not fear. Their bodies understood that a predator had arrived. Their pupils shrank. One thin man made a small, wet sound in his throat. My saber left its sheath. I had cut this pattern 1,000 times before. I cut once for the throat. I cut once for the belly. I cut once for the tendon behind the knee. These 3 cuts finished the 3 men. The clearing was quiet again very quickly. The 100-kill swordsman did not move. He stood at the edge of the trees. His hand rested on the hilt of his blade. His face was not afraid. He looked at me with great interest. He looked at me the way a scholar looks at a bone. He said I was very good for someone so young. His voice stayed soft. He had rarely seen a boy with such polished cuts. He was flattered that the Tang clan sent me to greet him. He asked if a 15-year-old could reach the mountaintop. I told him no boy could. However, a man who had stood there once could remember the path. His eyes narrowed. He did not know what I meant. He decided it did not matter. His sword came out. The 100-kill swordsman moved beautifully. His technique was called the 100 falling petals. Every strike was like one petal. The strikes came in overlapping arcs. To a peak master, it looked like a lie. To me, it looked like a memory. I had watched an old man use this style years from now. I had killed that man in 3 cuts. This swordsman was younger and sober. His first arc came at my collarbone. My blade tipped his blade sideways slightly. His second arc came at my ribs. My knee lifted and his forearm brushed my thigh. His third arc came toward the back of my neck. I was not there when it arrived. I was under his elbow. My saber slid between his third and fourth ribs. His body kept moving for another half step. His mouth opened. His eyes met mine and finally understood. He asked me who I really was. I pulled the blade free. He fell to one knee. His sword point scraped the stone. The answer he wanted was not for him. It was for the woman standing in the cave entrance. She watched a 15-year-old boy kill a legend easily. I told the dying man that his master should have stayed retired. His face twisted with recognition at the end. Silence came back to the slope. My aura was still active. I had not remembered to lower it. The old coat was still around my shoulders. The coat was heavy and ugly. I could hear my own breath rasping. There was a soft step behind me on the stone. So Wool had crossed the chalk line. She was walking toward me with wet eyes. She stopped and put her small hand on my shoulder. The aura folded down like a curtain. She did not say anything at first. Her fingers stayed on my shoulder. She was reminding herself that I was warm. Then she asked me very quietly what I was. I could not answer that question. Her father arrived 12 minutes later. I felt him first. Great masters carry a pressure different from killing intent. Killing intent is a threat, while presence is a weight. Tang Jinqian arrived carrying the weight of a mountain. He was the patriarch of the Sichuan Tang clan. He was known as the Poison King. The trees on either side of him were leaning slightly. He came alone and was dressed for travel. A green sash around his waist was his only mark. His face was calm and certain. His eyes found his daughter first, then he looked at the dead men and then at me. The residue of my killing intent hung like smoke. He stepped into it and dispersed it with a breath. The clearing in my chest felt lighter. I had been drowning in my own aura. His voice was polite when he spoke. He asked me for my name. I gave him the name I traveled under. I said my name was Chaon Hui. I told him I was a 15-year-old orphan. His mouth curved as if he knew this was false. However, he did not press for more information. He looked at his daughter instead. So Wool was still standing beside me. Her hand had left my shoulder only slightly. She met her father's eyes without fear. Her back straightened with new determination. She told him that this boy had saved her life. She said the flower she carried was a necessary purifier. She said she would explain more inside a carriage. Tang Jinqian looked at the dead legend nearby. He decided to be patient for now. He inclined his head at me with a half bow. This was more respect than I had expected. He lifted his daughter into his arms. He told me to walk beside him. We would speak on the way home. We reached the Tang estate 3 days later. I had seen the estate before. In the old life I had come here as a suitor. I had come here later as a friend. I had come one final time during the burning years. At that time the gates were smashed. No one was alive to greet me. Now the ponds were clean. The high walls still smelled of cedar oil. My chest hurt in a way I did not show. Servants took So Wool from the arms of her father. She looked back at me once while they carried her away. They moved her toward the inner courts of the estate. Her hand lifted a little with loose and tired fingers. It was a small wave and a smaller promise. She signaled that she would find me later that day. Tang Jinqian led me through the outer gardens himself. His men did not follow the two of us. The patriarch wanted this conversation to be entirely private. Along the path he asked me questions in a soft voice. Each small question felt like a knife wrapped in paper. He asked where I had learned to use the saber. I told the patriarch that a mountain hermit had taught me. The leader asked for the name of this mountain hermit. I gave a name that was once very real. This man died before my birth in this current life. I saw his body in a shrine during my old life. The patriarch asked how a hermit taught me secret pressure points. These points were used only inside the Iron Blood sect. I did not have a lie ready for that question. I told him the truth in a shape he could accept. I said the hermit had traveled widely during his youth. Old men collect strange skills the way misers collect coins. I told him I had been a very curious student. He walked in silence for a while after that statement. The gravel crunched loudly under our feet as we walked. Somewhere in the large estate a bell rang the hour. He said at last that he did not believe me. The patriarch also said that he did not care. He stated clearly that his daughter was still alive. He mentioned the flower she carried was worth many provinces. The man I killed had a very dangerous reputation. His own clan elders would have needed a counsel for him. If I had reasons to lie, he would discover them. If my intentions were pure, he would allow the secrets. Then the patriarch stopped walking and turned to face me. His eyes settled on my own for a long moment. I felt the full weight of the Poison King. His presence landed on my shoulders like a heavy hand. He asked me exactly what I wanted from him. Men had offered me kingdoms and gold in the past. They offered leadership of sects and many young concubines. All of it tasted like ash after So Wool died. None of those things were what I wanted right now. My answer came out much smaller than I had intended. I told him I would like to sit with a family. I wanted to eat a meal without watching the door. The patriarch did not react outwardly to my words. His jaw moved once and he kept walking the path. That night the clan set a banquet for the guests. It was not a formal event for the household. The Tang clan did not host banquets for mysterious guests. Instead, they held a small dinner in the middle courtyard. Lanterns lit the area while the patriarch sat at the table. So Wool sat at his right side during the dinner. She wore soft and pale clothing after her bath. I sat at his left in my traveling clothes. I had not been given permission to change my attire. Tong Chong was also sitting at the long table. He was the older brother of young So Wool. He was 6 years older than his younger sister. He looked like a man trained to protect her life. His entire purpose was to keep his sister breathing. He had the family dark eyes and a tight mouth. When I sat down, the young man stared at me. He looked at me like a snake in his kitchen. He was not sure whether to kill or feed me. He was leaning heavily toward killing me that night. He spoke first with a tone of icy politeness. He asked how I ended up alone with his sister. They had been in a cave for 3 days. I did not answer the question from the brother. I looked at So Wool instead of answering him. She put down her chopsticks very calmly on the table. So Wool told her brother that she and I were engaged. The chopsticks in the hand of Tang Chong snapped. He did not seem to notice the broken pieces. He looked at his sister with a look of shock. Then he looked over at his powerful father. The patriarch was drinking tea from a small cup. He did not appear to be surprised by the news. He set the cup down very deliberately on the wood. He said the engagement was currently under consideration. The matter would be discussed after the evening meal. I turned my head slowly to look at So Wool. She was staring down at her small rice bowl. The tips of her ears were a bright red. She used the word engaged like a small grenade. She wanted to see my reaction to the news. She also wanted to see the reactions of her family. The patriarch was doing nothing at the head table. He simply picked up his teacup once again. Tang Chong made a sound like a horse being kicked. His voice lost its ice and sounded very panicked. He asked when this arrangement had been made. He asked who authorized the union of the two. He wondered why no one had informed him earlier. The patriarch reminded his son that he led the family. His son closed his mouth after that firm reminder. He was not happy about the situation at the table. We ate our meal together in complete silence. The plates were cleared and the servants went to bed. The lanterns burned lower as the patriarch and I remained. So Wool had been sent to her private rooms. Her brother had been sent to his room less gently. The patriarch poured a small cup of dark liquid. I recognized the jug from my previous life immediately. It was one of his strongest and rarest medicinal wines. It was brewed only by members of the family. He did not offer me any of the dark wine. Boys of 15 years did not drink such things. He said the engagement was a very good idea. I set my small cup down on the table. He spoke with a strange and sudden softness. He used the tone men use for painful truths. The patriarch had considered this before meeting me. His daughter needed a husband who could stand beside her. No such man had appeared until this current week. His voice grew even softer as he spoke. He said his daughter did not have long to live. I said nothing, because I did not trust my face. He said her body carried a poisoned spirit. Such bodies were rare and powerful in the world. The condition made her a genius in the family arts. He also said that these bodies burned themselves out. His daughter would only live to 30 years. He said she would never bear a child. I picked up my empty cup and turned it slowly. I asked if the clan tried a specific decoction. It was the 7-herb decoction of the Southern School. The patriarch said they had used it many times. I asked about a bath of white ginseng steam. It had to be used in the 3rd month. He looked at me and said they had not. I asked if he knew the condition was no disease. It was a channel that needed to be widened. The clan records used the phrase closing gate. The correct phrase was actually opening river. His cup stopped halfway to his open mouth. I continued to speak softly and precisely to him. I spoke like So Wool had once spoken before. In a future garden, she explained her cure to me. This ailment almost killed her at 18 years old. She spent 2 decades researching that specific cure. She spent half of a fortune on the project. She never considered that anyone else might know it. She told me the recipe one evening in the garden. She laughed because she thought I would forget it. I had not forgotten any of the specific details. I recited the entire recipe for her surprised father. I listed each herb and the correct ratios. I explained the bathing schedule and the meditation posture. I named the meridians that needed to be opened. I spoke like a boy who remembered an old scroll. When I finished, the patriarch placed his hand down. He was looking past me into the far distance. The life of his daughter no longer ended at 30. His mouth moved, but he did not speak aloud. 1 minute passed, and then another minute passed. He stood up and walked around the table. The Poison King of Sichuan was a peak realm master. He was the head of a great house. He knelt before a 15-year-old boy. He pressed his fist firmly to the floor. I nearly panicked at the sight of his respect. The patriarch did not stand up from the floor. He said the recipe would take 1 month. If it worked, the clan would owe me a debt. The engagement was now a matter of family honor. Whatever I asked for in this life would be given. I asked him again to stand up. My voice cracked because I was only 15. The patriarch stood up and put hands on my shoulders. The warmth of his palms felt heavy and real. He asked me once more who I was. I opened my mouth to lie to him again. Something suddenly closed tightly around my dry throat. It was not a hand, and no one was behind me. There was no poison in the night air. The table was quiet and the lanterns burned steady. I could see the face of the patriarch perfectly. However, I could not breathe a single breath. A cold weight pressed down on my skull. An invisible thread wound around my tongue. My chest heaved, but no air moved inside me. My eyes began to water from the strain. The hands of the patriarch tightened in alarm. The thread eased when I stopped trying to speak. I gasped as the cool air poured back in. The patriarch reached for his medicine pouch. I told him it was nothing but exhaustion. I claimed I had been on the road too long. He did not believe me, but he did not press. He knew when a mystery should be left alone. I sat there breathing carefully after the attack. Something had been put inside my head. It did not want me to explain the recipe. It did not want me to say the word regression. This force waited until I tried to tell the truth. It stopped me from speaking to the patriarch. I did not know what it was yet. I would learn in my own time. I nodded when the patriarch told me to rest. A servant led me to the guest wing. I lay on a soft bed in a soft room. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. At dawn, a maid brought me tea and news. Tang Jinqian was leaving early that morning. The demonic cult had moved a cell into Guangdong. Reports had reached the estate in the night. The patriarch would take a strike team of elites. They planned to burn the cell to ash. He ordered his daughter and her fiancé to stay. They were to remain inside the estate walls. I drank the tea and thanked the quiet maid. I waited for her to leave the room. Then I got up and started dressing for a ride. So Wool was already waiting in the stables. She had beaten me by a small margin. Her hair was tied back tightly for travel. Her sleeves were bound at the wrists. She was checking the girth on a brown mare. She looked experienced in these quiet matters. When she saw me, she was not surprised. She asked why I took so long to arrive. I told her I had been getting dressed. She told me to dress faster next time. We slipped out through the west postern. A great house always has a west gate. A guard is always stationed at that post. Usually this was the youngest man in the rotation, so Wool waved at the young guard. He waved back and forgot he saw us. This took less than 1 minute to happen. That was not stealth but a sign of privilege. Her father would punish him for it later. I could not bring myself to warn the man. The road to Guangdong was very long. We rode hard and changed horses twice. She paid for everything in small silver. We traveled mostly during the dark hours. During the heat, we rested under roadside trees. She did not complain about the long journey. She rode better than most men I knew. In the old life, she had done this trip alone. She did it in worse weather to save a friend. I did not tell her these secret things. I told her that she had the seat of a soldier. She scowled at me for making that comment. She considered herself a lady of quality. On the third night, we were on a hilltop above a small village. She asked me why I had told her father about the cure. I said I told him because it would keep her alive. She said many things would keep her alive. A bodyguard or a cage of iron would keep her alive. A pot of soup every morning would keep her alive. Curing her was different. Curing her had a price. She wanted to know what the price was. I did not answer her question. Instead, I watched the road below us. Somewhere between us and the coast, her father was tearing a demonic cult cell apart. He was doing this with his own hands. I did not want to arrive too early. I did not want to arrive too late. She reached over and took my sleeve between 2 fingers. She tugged it once. She said quietly that she was not stupid. She said she would find out who I really was eventually. She told me to stop pretending she was a child. I told her I did not think she was a child. That was the truth. I had never once looked at her and seen a child. This was a strange thing to say to a 15-year-old girl. I heard how it sounded a moment too late. She did not react outwardly. She only let go of my sleeve. However, her ears turned a little pink again. She turned her face toward the road so I could not see it. She said we should sleep. We slept. The next afternoon was 4 days out from the Tang estate. We crested a low ridge and saw the smoke. The demonic cult cell in Guangdong had built its base in an old salt mine. The mine was half collapsed and half repaired. It was hidden inside a valley. This area had been miner country 100 years ago. It was mostly empty scrubland now. The smoke was thin and green. The smoke rose in one narrow column into a windless sky. I knew that color of smoke, so Wool knew it too. She reined in her horse beside me. Her hand went to her mouth. She said her father was already inside. Her father had used the signature blend of the family. The elders called it Kingfisher's breath. It was a weaponized poison mist that hung heavy at ankle height. The mist rose slowly as it did its work. It did not kill quickly. It did not kill kindly. The poison ate flesh at the rate a slow fire eats paper. Men who breathed it in did not die. Men who stepped in it did. I told her we would ride down. I told her to keep her scarf up. I warned her that she would see terrible things inside the mine. I told her not to look at them for long. She nodded once. Her hand did not shake on the reins. She was a Tang. The Tang family teaches children early that their arts are ugly. We came down into the valley at a canter. The gate of the mine was already open. The gate was hanging on one hinge. Two men lay in the doorway with their weapons still in their belts. They were not dead. They were also not alive. Their eyes were open, but they could not blink. This was the work of Kingfisher's breath. We walked past them. So Wool did not look. I noted quietly that I had underestimated her father. Inside the first tunnel, the mist had already lifted. The poison settled thin against the roof. It had done its work here. The bodies were further along the tunnel. We stepped past them one by one. Some had melted into their own robes. Some were only bone. There was a smell that no scarf would truly keep out. I heard the fighting deep in the tunnels. There were two different fights happening. I heard two different rhythms and two different rings of steel. Two men were still capable of standing against Tang Jinqian. We broke into a run. The tunnel opened into a great cavern at the far end. Old lantern wheels hung from the ceiling. Old salt still crusted the walls. Tang Jinqian stood alone in the center of the cavern. Two figures were backing away from him. The first was a tall man wrapped in dirty white bandages. His arms were bare and thickly muscled. A large axe was slung across his back. The bandaged man was breathing hard. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. The second person was a woman in dark blue. Her metal gauntlets reached to her elbows. Her hair was pinned up with a single long needle. Her face was flat with fury. Tang Jinqian was not breathing hard. He stood with one hand hanging loose at his side. His other hand rested on the green sash at his waist. There was a slight discoloration on his forearm. It was the only mark on him. The two cult officers had forced him to use most of his poisons. That was not a small thing. Most Peak Realm Masters could not have forced that. However, it had not saved them. He saw us the moment we entered the cavern. His face did not change, but his voice did. He spoke in a tone I had never heard before. He told his daughter not to take one more step forward. She stopped where she was. Her hand went into her sleeve for the paralysis mist. The bandaged man laughed with a wet sound. He looked past Tang Jinqian at us. He said the Poison King had brought his children. Then the man did something I did not expect. He threw the axe. He did not throw it at Tang Jinqian. He threw it at his own feet. The axe struck the black rock and shattered it. A crack opened and the cavern floor sank. A hidden passage appeared beneath the two officers. Both of them dropped down through it and were gone. Tang Jinqian took 2 long strides after them. He stopped at the edge of the crack. His face did not move. However, the killing intent rolling off his shoulders was enormous. Even 30 paces away, I felt my knees want to lock. He turned to us. He said the 2 officers would come up to the east. He said the tunnel would take them at least 10 minutes. He could not go after them himself. He had to guard the mine entrance against reinforcements. He said he did not want his daughter chasing them either. Then he spoke very evenly. He said he was aware his daughter would chase them anyway. He told me I had better keep saving her. He turned back to the mouth of the mine. That was the closest thing to a blessing from a Tang patriarch. So Wool grabbed my wrist and we ran. The tunnel led out on the eastern slope. The exit was in a small hollow ringed by pine trees. We came up through the trees at a hard sprint. We came out above the officers. I once knew a man who had scouted this mine. He had described the shape of these hills. The 2 officers were staggering out of a hidden fissure. We dropped down into the hollow in front of them. They stopped. The bandaged man looked at both of us. He said the Poison King had sent his puppies. I unslung my saber. So Wool set her feet and her sleeves came alive. Needles slid between her fingers. A small vial rose between her teeth. A folded paper lay in her palm. The woman in blue did not laugh. She looked at me for a long moment. She said something to the bandaged man in a low voice. He waved her off while smiling. He stepped forward and swung a short axe. I do not like fighting men with axes. Axes are ugly and have no elegance. You cannot parry an axe cleanly. You must simply not be where the axe is going. His first swing missed my head. His second swing missed my chest. His third swing stopped halfway through its arc. My saber was already inside his guard. My blade point was against the underside of his jaw. The man froze. His eyes were suddenly very awake. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. I had already slid the saber up half an inch. I did not remember doing it. I told him he should have known better. He thought his weight would carry him through a boy. I told him I had already killed him once. That did not make sense to him. I stepped back and cut. His body went in 2 directions. The woman in blue was faster than her partner. She understood what was happening. She did not come at me. Instead, she attacked So Wool. That was a big mistake. Her gauntlets were beautiful work made of layered steel. They were engraved with cult sigils. She reached for the throat of So Wool. She drew back her other hand for a hammer blow. So Wool blew the vial. A fine gray dust filled the air. The woman in blue held her breath as she was trained to do. However, the dust was for her skin. It settled on her hands and wrists. Within 2 heartbeats, her gauntlets began to smoke. She screamed. It was the first sound she had made. She tore at the buckles. The metal was already fused to her skin, so Wool did not watch. She spun to my side with needles ready. I stepped past her. My saber came around low. The woman in blue was still fighting her gauntlets. She saw the cut coming. She could not move to stop it. I took her at the waist. It was over before the scream finished. Silence fell into the hollow like a stone into a well. So Wool was breathing hard from the fight. She looked at me across the trampled grass. Her eyes were bright. Her cheeks were flushed and her ears were red again. Then she saw my side. The second swing from the bandaged man had not missed. There was a long cut along my ribs. My robe was soaked black. I had not noticed the wound before. She was next to me in 3 steps. Her hands were already at my sash. She said we needed to close the wound now. She worried about infection from cult weapons. She opened her medicine pouch. She tipped a small green paste onto her fingertip. I told her I could do it. She told me to be quiet. She pulled my robe open and looked at the wound. Her jaw set. She tore a strip off her own sleeve. She folded the cloth and pressed it against the cut. The green paste had to be worked into the skin. Poison masters have their own way of doing this. It was quick and effective. However, it was also extremely awkward. She bent her head. Her mouth touched my ribs. Her tongue moved once along the length of the cut. She worked the paste into the edges of the wound. It took perhaps 2 seconds. It was medicine and clan technique. Her father walked into the hollow at that exact instant. The Poison King stopped at the trees. He looked at his daughter with her mouth on my ribs. He looked at the 2 dead cultists on the pine needles. He looked back at his daughter. His face did not move. However, his jaw muscle twitched. So Wool straightened up very fast. The green paste had already closed the wound. She wiped her mouth with her hand. She acted as if she had just finished a cup of tea. She said his timing was terrible. Her father agreed that his timing was terrible. He said they would discuss this once they were home. He noted that the only dignity left lay with the boy. At least the boy appeared to be bleeding. The boy appeared to be bleeding. That boy was me. I made the small strategic decision to look at the ground. We rode back to Sichuan. The ride was quieter than the ride out in every possible way. Behind the small procession was one live prisoner. He was tied across the back of a spare horse. Tang Jinqian had found him near the inner sanctum of the mine. He was an old man in the robes of a demonic cult elder. He was thin, dry, and half blind. His mouth had been sewn shut once and stitched back together crookedly. According to my memory, his name was Yo Nong Haka. In the old life, he was one of the men who signed the writ. That writ ordered the fall of the Tang clan. I would have liked to kill him with my own hands. I told her father I could break him. The patriarch looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Interrogations in a great house are private things. They do not happen in courtyards or throne rooms. They happen in a small stone cell in a far corner of the estate. The cell has a drain in the floor and no window. It has 1 door with 2 locks. Tang Jinqian took me there personally, so Wool was not permitted to come. She stood at the entrance to the corridor. She folded her arms and glared, but she did not follow us. The elder was already inside and tied to a chair. His mouth was uncovered. He was smiling. His smile faltered when he saw me. He did not recognize me. His smile faltered because a Peak Realm Master had just walked in with a 15-year-old boy. The Peak Realm Master stepped aside to let the boy speak first. I did not touch him because I did not need to. The mind of Yonong Haka was sealed. This was the standard seal of the inner circle of the demonic cult. If pressed for information, he would either lie flawlessly or die. He would die on the spot with his tongue turned black. It was a good seal and elegant work. In the old life, I had studied it for 1 year. A man I hated had used it to keep secrets from me. Eventually, I learned how to break it. I set my hand on the forehead of the elder. He tried to bite me, but I ignored it. I sank my chi through his skin and past his skull. I followed the meridian that carried the seal. I found the small knot the cult had tied into his mind at 12 years old. It was a beautiful knot in its way. I untied it like a shoelace, one loop at a time. He started talking before the last loop came free. He talked about the plans of the cult. He talked about the western passes. He mentioned that the mine in Guangdong was one of 6. He talked about a caravan of children being taken north. They were being taken to feed a furnace. I did not let my hand shake on his forehead. Tang Jinqian was writing all of it down. His brush moved fast and steady on the paper. The paper was across his knee. At the end, when the elder was drained, I asked him one last question. I asked him what rank his leader had reached. He rolled his eyes up to look at me. His mouth was slack from the broken seal. He whispered a phrase I had heard only 3 times in the old life. He spoke of the supreme demon realm. Then he died, but not by my hand. Once broken, the seal always killed its host within 15 minutes. That was the point of the seal. Tang Jinqian stood up slowly. He looked at me across the dead body. He said that no 15-year-old boy should know how to untie that knot. I did not answer him. He said no 15-year-old boy should know the phrase Supreme Demon Realm. It was a phrase used only inside 2 chambers in the world. Both of those chambers had guards outside their doors. I did not answer him. The patriarch said he had been patient for many days. He said he had earned an answer. He said he would like it now. I opened my mouth to speak. The thread wound around my tongue again. This time I was ready for it. I did not fight the feeling. I let the thread tighten. I felt it press against the inside of my throat. I let my breath slow and let the pressure sit there. Then I tried very carefully to speak around it. I tried to give him even one true word. I thought of regression, the future, or my return. The thread pulled taut across my windpipe like a wire. My vision went white at the edges. My knees folded under me. I caught myself on the stone table with one hand. Tang Jinqian was already reaching for me. His hand landed on my shoulder. He was saying something. I could hear his voice, but not the words. There was a roaring in my ears. I stopped trying to speak. The thread released its hold. Air came back to me. I looked up at him with a raw throat. My eyes were wet. I told him that something in my mind would not let me speak. This was the only truth I could still put into a sentence. His hand tightened on my shoulder. He understood me. He did not know exactly what he understood, but he understood. He asked me if I had done it to myself. I told him that I had not. He asked me if it hurt. I told him that it did. He nodded once and did so slowly. Then he lifted me under the arms. He carried me as if I were much younger than 15. We went out of the cell and up 2 flights of stairs. We entered the guest wing. He set me down on the bed. He told a servant to bring warm water and a doctor. The doctor came and found nothing wrong with me. That was worse than finding a problem. Tang Jinqian sat by the bed for a while. He did not speak but watched my face. His eyes were tired like a father returning from war. He found that the war had followed him home. At last he told me to sleep and he left. The door closed behind him. The room was quiet. My throat still ached where the thread had pulled. My chest still ached where the paste had closed the wound. My eyes were wet and I did not know why. I heard a small sound. The door slid open a hand width. So Wool stood in the gap in her sleeping robe. Her hair was loose and her feet were bare on the wood. She had been listening in the corridor. She had probably been listening for hours. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She crossed the room very quietly. She sat on the edge of my bed. She did not touch me right away. She sat for a while and looked at her hands. Then she reached out to me. Her palm came up to my cheek. It was warm and dry. She said she wished her poisons could reach the thing inside my head. She said her poisons were good for hearts, lungs, and blood. She said they were no use for the thing wrapped around my tongue. She said she was sorry. I did not trust myself to answer her. Her hand was very warm. She looked at me for a long time. Then she asked me in a quiet voice whether I saw someone else. She asked if I saw another woman when I looked at her. She asked about the way I looked at her. She noticed that I flinched sometimes. She noted that I knew what she liked to eat. I knew what she was afraid of. I knew where the small scar on her wrist had come from. She asked if this was because of her or someone else. The room was quiet. Her palm did not leave my cheek. I opened my mouth to answer. The thread was there again. It was not tight yet, but it was waiting. I did not try to fight the thread this time. I closed my mouth again. The thread eased. So Wool watched my face. She had seen the small tremor at my jaw. She was too clever not to notice. Her thumb moved along my cheekbone once very lightly. She said I did not have to answer. I told her I did have to answer. Whatever else I could not say, she deserved this. I chose my words carefully and slowly. I tested each word before I let it out. I waited to see if the thing in my head would pull tight. I told her that when I looked at her, I did not see someone else. The thread did not tighten. I told her that I knew things about her. I said I had no reason to know these things. I admitted she was right to notice. The thread stayed loose. I told her that the reason was not another woman. The reason was only her. She was the only her that had ever existed. She was the only her I had ever wanted. The thread did not touch me. Her hand shook a little on my cheek. Her eyes were very shiny. She did not cry because she was a member of the Tang family. She swallowed the shine down before it fell. She nodded once and leaned forward. She pressed her forehead against mine. We sat that way for a long time. Her breath was warm on my mouth. Her hair brushed my temple. I did not move. Some part of me was still 15 and unpracticed. Another part of me was 40 and had waited 20 years for this. She pulled back after a while. Her cheeks were pink. Her mouth almost smiled but did not quite. She said her father would kill me if he found her in this room. I agreed with her. She stood up and smoothed her sleeping robe. She walked to the door. Her hand rested on the frame. She looked back at me over her shoulder. She told me she was going to keep asking questions. I told her I knew. She told me she was going to figure me out one day. She said she would do it whether I helped or not. I told her I hoped she would. She slipped out and the door clicked shut. The corridor was silent. I lay back against the pillow. I stared at the wooden ceiling for the second night in a row. My throat still hurt. My side still ached. My chest did not ache for the first time in 20 years. I slept. Morning came pale and gray. A servant brought hot water and a change of clothes. I dressed slowly. My ribs pulled at me when I lifted my arms. That was fine. Pain in a rib meant a rib was still there. The estate had a different sound that morning. It was a quieter sound. There were fewer footsteps in the corridors. There were more voices behind closed doors. Something had happened in the night. I could hear it in the small hesitations of the maids. One left me a tray of buns but would not meet my eyes. Tang Chong came for me before I finished the buns. He walked into my room without knocking. He was in traveling clothes. His hair was tied high. There was a saber at his hip. I had not seen him wear it at the banquet. His face was the face of a man who had not slept. He said his father wished to see me now. I set the bun down. I followed Tang Chong through the estate. Servants stepped aside for us. 2 guards fell into step behind us. That was an escort and not casual. I did not comment on it. Tang Chong did not look at me. His shoulders were tight enough to crack. The patriarch was not in the courtyard. He was not in his study. He was in a long, narrow chamber at the back of the estate. The room was lined with maps. These were real maps and not the decorative kind. They were painted by hand by men who had walked the borders. 3 maps of the western provinces were pinned to the long table. 1 map of the coast was there too. A 4th map showed the entire martial world. Tang Jinqian stood at the head of the table. 3 elders were with him. All of them looked up when I entered. They looked at me like a strange coin on a table. Tang Chong stepped aside. He did not leave the room. He stood by the door with his hand near his hilt. The patriarch did not waste time. He said that a rider had reached the estate during the night. The rider came from the northwest. The rider was from an orthodox sect called the White Stone School. It was 3 days of travel from the border. He said the White Stone School was gone. It was not just defeated, it was gone. Every hall, pavilion, and disciple was burned. The rider had been the youngest apprentice of the master. He had ridden 3 horses to death to reach Sichuan. He had died at the gate 1 hour before dawn. The message he carried had been sewn into his robe. The patriarch pushed the paper across the table. I did not need to examine it. I already knew what it said. He said it anyway. The White Stone School had been destroyed by a single figure in black. This person moved alone and entered through the front gate at dusk. He walked out at dawn. The messenger described the figure only as a young man with very tired eyes. The messenger said one more thing before he died. The young man asked a specific question on his way out. He wanted to know where the youngest daughter of the Sichuan Tang clan was traveling. The room became very quiet. One of the elders looked at me. His voice tried to be neutral as he spoke. He said the timing was interesting. A certain boy of 15 had walked into their estate a week ago. This boy carried knowledge that no 15-year-old should have. The hand of Tang Chong tightened on the hilt of his weapon. Tang Jinqian raised one finger to signal silence. The elder stopped talking immediately. The patriarch looked at me with tired but not accusing eyes. He did not think I was the man in black. The man in black was described as being in his 20s. I was clearly not that age. The man in black had asked about the daughter of the patriarch. I had already saved her. A man does not ordinarily save what he intends to kill. However, a pattern was forming. The patriarch noted several events from this single season. These included the assassination attempt on his daughter and the cult cell in Guangdong. The destruction of the White Stone School and my arrival were also part of it. These events were not a coincidence. The patriarch did not yet know the shape of the pattern. He did not like patterns he could not name. He asked me a very simple question. He asked if the man in black would come to this place. I opened my mouth to speak. The thread was already there and waiting for me. It tightened the moment I formed the first word. I did not fight the sensation. I only nodded once and slowly. I wanted him to understand that yes was the only answer. Yes was all I could give him. The patriarch nodded back. He turned to his elders and his voice changed. He spoke with the voice of the Poison King rather than a father. He gave orders quickly. The outer wall needed reinforcement within the day. Every disciple above first class had to return to the estate within the week. The poison stores needed to be checked and doubled. He ordered the ancestral hall opened. The 3 great pieces were to be removed from their shrines. They were to be prepared for use. The elders went very still at this command. Then the patriarch turned to his son. He told Tang Chong to take his sister and the boy and leave the estate. Tang Chong opened his mouth to protest. The patriarch did not let him finish his thought. He said the pattern centered on his daughter. As long as his daughter remained under this roof, the house was a target. He would not lose his youngest child while her home fell. His son would take her and the boy with a small escort. They would go east to a quiet family location. They would stay there until the patriarch sent word. Tang Chong closed his mouth and bowed. His shoulders remained tight. The patriarch turned back to me and his face softened slightly. He said he did not know who I was. He still did not know why I possessed such knowledge. He had not decided if I was a gift or a debt. However, he noted that his daughter had made her choice. When his daughter chose something, she chose it for keeps. He had watched her since she was very small. He had never seen her look at anything the way she looked at me last night. She came out of my guest room at a late hour. No daughter of his should have been in a guest room then. His son had reported the specific hour. Tang Chong stood by the door and turned a deep shade of red. This would have been amusing in other circumstances. The patriarch spoke without changing his expression. Then he said one more thing. It landed like a hand on the back of my neck. He said he would find me if I hurt her in any way. This threat applied to this life or any other. I told him he would not have to search for me. He looked at me for a long moment and said that was good. We rode out of the Tang estate 1 hour later. There were 7 of us in total. Tang Chong led the group with 3 sworn guards. So Wool rode in the middle with me at her side. An old servant brought up the rear. In the old life, he was the last of the men of her father to die. I noted his presence quietly and did not say his name. So Wool was silent for the first hour of the road. She rode close to me. The shoulder of her horse bumped mine on the narrow parts of the path. I let her think in silence. At the top of the first pass, she reined in her horse. She looked back at the estate in the distance. Morning smoke rose from the many chimneys of the estate. Her father was down there giving orders to protect his home. She said she did not like leaving him. I told her that he did not like it either. She said her father had never sent her away before. I told her this was because he had never needed to. She looked at me sideways with sharp eyes. She said I spoke about her father like an old friend. She noted I had only shared 2 meals with him. I did not answer her. She turned her horse forward again. She said she was going to keep asking questions. She had told me that once before. She said it again with a small smile that was not quite a smile. We continued riding east. The destination was a small mountain villa, a ride of 2 days from the coast. It sat in a fold of green hills with a stream. There was a walled garden and 3 low buildings. An old caretaker lived there. His grandmother had served the Tang clan and his grandson would too. He did not ask questions when 7 riders arrived. We settled into the villa. The first day was quiet. Tang Chong walked the wall 3 times. He set the guards in shifts. So Wool unpacked her things in the smallest building. I took the room next to her. Tang Chong tried to make me sleep across the courtyard. So Wool threatened to poison his tea if he moved my things. He looked at her and she looked back. My things stayed where they were. The evening was warm. We ate together in the courtyard under a single lantern. Tang Chong did not speak much. He watched me with wary attention. Something in his gaze had shifted. He had seen how his father spoke to me. He was not sure what to make of that interaction. After the meal, the guards took their posts. Tang Chong went to inspect the wall for the 4th time. So Wool and I walked the path along the stream. The moon was rising. The water looked like silver in the dark. She stopped beside a small stone bridge and leaned on the rail. She said the villa was pretty. I told her that I agreed. She mentioned she had never been here before. I did not tell her that I had visited this place. I had come here once at the end of the old life. I came alone 3 days after her death. She had once mentioned wanting to see the villa in the spring. I had walked this same path along the stream. I stood on this same bridge. Back then, the caretaker was dead and the garden was burned. Only the stream remained beautiful. I told her only that it was a good place. She turned to face me in the moonlight. Her hand found the front of my robe. She curled her fingers into the fabric near my throat. She asked me to promise her one thing. I waited for her to continue. She said I must not stand in front of her when the fight came. She reminded me she was a Tang. She had been raised for danger. She would not have a boy she cared about dying for her. She did not want a storybook ending. If we fought, we would fight side by side. I looked at her hand on my collar. Her hand was small but steady. I told her I would try. She said that a try was not a promise. I told her that try was the only promise I could make. My throat would not let me speak any other words. She looked up at me with quiet eyes. She said she would accept that for now. Her hand stayed on my collar for a moment. Then she stepped back and turned toward the villa. She began to walk away. She stopped halfway across the bridge but did not turn her head. She said she had one more question for the night. I waited for her. She had been thinking since we left the estate. The man in black had asked about her at the school. The assassin in the forest had also come for her. The cult in Guangdong was part of the same pattern. All of these people were hunting her. None of them had come for me. She noted this difference. If we were both marked, the pattern would show it. Assassins would have found both of our names. This meant they were only coming for her. Whoever I was not the one they hunted. I was simply the one who was always there. She turned her head slightly to show her profile. I saw the sharp point of her chin in the moonlight. I saw a wet gleam in the corner of her eye. She was not going to let it fall. She asked me why this was happening. I could not answer. The answer was too large for any throat to speak. I did not try to say anything. I walked the last few paces and stood beside her. I lifted one hand and touched the back of her hand. I was gentle, like touching a bird. She let her hand turn under mine. Her fingers slid between my fingers. She did not ask the question again. We stood on the bridge for a while longer. The stream ran under us in the dark. A lantern was being lit for the night watch. The wind moved through the pines above the walls. Somewhere to the northwest, a man in black walked the road. He had tired eyes and a question on his tongue. I never met him in the old life. Back then, he was someone else's problem. Eventually, he became the herald of the heavenly demon. Then he became everyone's problem. By then, it had been far too late. I did not know his name yet. I would learn his name in time. The pattern would show me everything. So Wool had already seen half of the truth. She would see the rest soon enough. She squeezed my hand and said we should go inside. We went inside as the lanterns were lowered. Tang Chong was a dark shape against the moon on the wall. He watched the road to the east. The old caretaker was closing the front gate. So Wool let go of my hand. She said goodnight at the door of her building. Her voice meant more than a simple farewell. Then she stepped inside and slid the door shut. I stood in the courtyard alone. The wind moved through the garden. A bird cried up on the ridge and then fell silent. I turned toward my own room but did not reach it. A figure stood very still in the deep shadow of two pillars. He had not been there a moment before. The man was tall and dressed in black. His face was in shadow, but his eyes caught the light. They were very tired eyes. He inclined his head at me politely. He acted as if we were old friends. He spoke softly and said he had been looking for the youngest daughter of the Sichuan Tang clan. He stated that he was pleased to have found her. In that same soft voice, he added that he did not expect the boy at her side to be me.